Welcome back to Build to Sell with JB. Today is a really short episode, but don't sleep on this one, because one of the top questions I get in conversation from folks is, how did you get started as an M&A person? And ultimately, how did you get started as an entrepreneur? And for a long time, I would go back to the first real legitimate business that I built, and then maybe a little bit of what I was doing in corporate America, which had some entrepreneurial tendencies to it. But that's not the true answer, and it never felt quite right to me. So I spent some time over the holiday thinking back to times in my life where 44-year-old me would look back and say, that kid was an entrepreneur and didn't know it. And immediately, the moment that I started to exhibit entrepreneurial traits came to mind. Here's the headline. I was a teenage bootlegger. For real. So my mom and her boyfriend, my mom was a bartender and boyfriend traveled a lot and owned a business. And, they liked to have a drink when they were home and have folks over to our home to socialize. And so because of that, we had a pretty extensive bar in the living room with all sorts of different spirits on it. And we lived in Maine, and in Maine, obviously directly below that is New Hampshire. And my mother's boyfriend at the time would travel throughout New England doing what he did. And every time he would come back, he would stop at the New Hampshire State Liquor Store, because the prices for liquor in New Hampshire are significantly less than they are in Maine because of taxes. It's sort of a thing, even to this day. And so he would stock up on all sorts of different things and bring it home. Well, we didn't have a lot of money, and I certainly didn't have a lot of money, but yet I wanted to have the ability to buy a soda on the way home from school, or if there were a pair of sneakers I wanted to get them. So I was trying to figure out, what can a kid at that age do in a very small town with not a lot of opportunity to make money? At about 14 years old, I recognized that a lot of my friends there was high demand for alcohol. And so what I started doing was I would take alcohol from my parents' bar. I would wash out a Sprite or Coke or whatever bottle. I would then put alcohol in it, and I would sell that to my friends. I am not proud of this, but this is, the way you start off in life sometimes. And when I look back at that, not the fact that I did it, but the way I did it makes me realize that even then I was in the very early stages of having an entrepreneurial brain, because I didn't just pick random people and ask them whatever they wanted and sell it to them. I had a whole process. So I'd get the bottles of soda, I would wash them out, make sure they were clean, and I would rotate whatever spirit I was selling in any given week. And I never sold more than one or two a week. And the trick was, the customer didn't get to choose the alcohol they got, which you can do when you're selling to 14 through 17-year-olds, because they don't care. So one week it might be Canadian Club, another week it might be vodka, another week it might be amaretto or melon liqueur. You did not get to choose. So I would put it in the bottle, and we lived down this really long dirt road. And the end of the dirt road was a kind of a main state highway. And we had a culvert. For those of you who don't know what that is, it's a, tube essentially made out of metal to put underneath the driveway so that bodies of water can flow through it in a ditch. And I had this elaborate dead drop set up where they had to pay me $20 beforehand. I would give them a date and time, no text back then, so I had to tell them in person or with notes. They would then know they could pick it up at the culvert, in the culvert, at a certain day, after a certain time. It was a dead drop. So I would sell the alcohol, and then I would then water down the ones that could be watered down, even going so far as to use some food coloring so that none of the alcohols, you could tell that I was pouring from them into these bottles and selling them. And I also would rotate the stock, because there was enough sheer volume of bottles that I never really hit any one more than once. So for a 14-year-old starting an admittedly illicit business that I would kill my children for doing today, I can look back at that point in time and realize, what was I doing? I was recognizing demand. I was recognizing that I had a supply to meet that demand, logistics, and even a little bit of supply chain management. And that was my first business. I was a teenage bootlegger. It only lasted for, I don't know, 6 months. And then I lost my nerve and sort of started realizing that there was going to come a point where my parents figured it out if I didn't stop doing that. And I also was a little bit concerned, even at that age, that if I provided alcohol to one of my friends and they did something stupid or something bad happened, I didn't understand the legality of it, but I did understand the moral implications that I would feel responsible for that. And it wasn't a good feeling. So I stopped doing it. But that was how I started my very first business. It was a black market business in bootlegging. And I was 14 years old. And that little gig bought me some sneakers and a whole lot of Little Debbie snack cakes and, a lot of Cokes. So there you have it. That's how an M&A advisor who works on millions and millions of dollars of deals every year got his start as a teenage bootlegger in the early 90s in rural Maine.